Hi guys. In today's video, I'll be looking at the top 3 late game Frost Maiden or Cold Bowazon builds that are more faster paced and satisfying to play. Previously, I covered the top 3 best value Cold Bowazon builds that are effective freezing arrow based Bowazons that use items that are not too far out of reach for most players. If you're starting out in making a Bowazon and don't have a lot of hide runes laying around to trade with, then watch the rest of this video first, then look out for the other video at the end. For the late game Cold Bowazon builds in this video today, they'll assume using either a Harmony Bow or faster cast rate gear on Switch, an Act 2 Mercenary with an Infinity Rune Word, with an Annie, Amazon Torch, and a Cold Sunder Charm in a Bowazon's inventory, and using an Enigma for teleport and other handy mods. Like mentioned previously, keep in mind that at the time of this video, Sunder Charms are only available on ladder. So if you're not playing on ladder, then a pure Cold Bowazon is going to be more limited to farming in areas that have no or few cold immunes. Even with an Infinity on an Act 2 Mercenary, most cold immune monsters in the game do not get their immunities broken without a Cold Sunder Charm. So with that said, let's jump in. Starting with number 3 today, we have a Cold Bowazon using a Faith matriarchal bow. Faith for most people doesn't need an introduction, and certainly if you've been watching most of the videos in this channel, Faith has been used or covered quite extensively for multi-shot Bowazons. For a Cold Bowazon, Faith offers up +2 to all skills, which in a matriarchal bow base grants up to +5 to bow skills in total, a fanaticism aura while equipped, which allows a Bowazon to shoot her arrows really fast, large bonuses to attack rating, and the ignore target's defense property, which pretty much guarantees 95% chance to hit. This is going to be important for those freezing arrows to allow them to pierce and hit onward targets. And then 15% all resistances as well, which for a build that struggles with resists helps a lot. So we have a bow that has lots of plus to bow skills, lots of attack speed, a high chance to hit, high physical damage, and all resists. This makes Faith a really good all-rounder. The Fanaticism Aura also has the advantage of granting a faster attack speed for the Bowazon's Mercenary, which is going to be useful for the Act 2 Mercenary wielding an Infinity, which has got 40% crushing blow and is going to be handy for those boss takedowns. The main drawback for a Faith, however, for a Cold Bowazon is a lack of minus enemy cold resist modifiers. Because Faith doesn't have this, the Bowazon's freezing arrow attacks are going to perform particularly poorly against monsters that are highly resistant or immune to cold. So the Bowazon will need to fall back to using Magic Arrow or Multi-Shot for cold immunes, which does perform quite okay with a Faith bow. But for the purists out there that only want to use freezing arrow, using a Faith against cold immunes might be a deal breaker for you. So to sum up, Faith is a good all-rounder for a Cold Bowazon build, but its weakness is going to be up against those cold immune monsters. And for what it's worth, because Faith is a very fast shooting bow, your aim and speed has to be on point to maximize the effectiveness of using a Faith with a Bowazon that primarily uses freezing arrow. This might be a draw card for those players out there that really want to push their hand-eye coordination or get a small workout while playing Diablo 2. But if you're wanting something that's more relaxing to play, then another bow is definitely going to be for you. In any case, a Bowazon using a Faith matriarchal bow sits in at number 3 spot today for best late game Cold Bowazon builds. Next in at number 2, we have a Cold Bowazon using a Cold Faceted matriarchal bow. This is just a plain matriarchal bow socketed with cold facets. Each cold facet grants plus a cold skill damage, minus enemy cold resistances, and flat cold damage. All of these mods are going to be beneficial for freezing arrow. And I say 4 or 5 facets because a matriarchal bow can have up to 5 open sockets. And with 4 or 5 perfect cold facet jewels socketed into a matriarchal bow, it creates a bow that is exceedingly effective for freezing arrow Bowazon. And the last open socket can be used to insert either a shell rune to meet a key attack speed breakpoint or another perfect cold facet to maximize damage. In either case, you get a bow that has plus 20 or more % cold skill damage, minus 20% or more enemy cold resistances, flat cold damage of 96 to 152 or more, then when socketed in a matriarchal bow, plus 3 to bow skills and a decent attack speed, which if socketed with a shell rune reaches a 8 frames attack speed breakpoint. Comparing this to a Wizendraw, this bow has many additional freezing arrow damage stats and a faster attack speed. And although Wizendraw still has a high minus enemy cold resistance bonus, the cold faceted matriarchal bow still provides more DPS overall versus all monsters, whether they are immune or not. The main disadvantage of this bow is the physical damage is really low, so mana leech is not going to be effective, and mana sustain needs to be found from mana after each kill gear, such as Silkweaves and a mana after each kill with attack speed jewel in Nightwing's Veil, points into energy, and items that provide mana. Having said that, I tested this bow in Players 8 Cows and was able to sustain my mana levels, so it's certainly not impossible to sustain mana levels when using this bow. The other problem with this bow is it offers no other stats, and with the mana challenges mentioned, it's going to be harder to stack resistances on a build that's using this bow. But we're talking about a late game build here, and there certainly are rare gloves, boots, rings, charms, or even circlet options that are available at this level that provide a mix of mana recovery, and resist that go towards addressing any issues with low resistances or mana sustain. And so this bow works really well and is different from the conventional runeword options out there if you're into something that's more unconventional. Just remember to get enough resist, mana sustain, and attack rating on your build if you're considering using this bow. So a Bowazon using a cold faceted matriarchal bow sits in number 2 spot today for best late game cold Bowazon builds. Before we cover the build in first place, we have 2 honourable mentions today. The first honourable mention goes to a Bowazon using a Wizendraw. We previously covered Wizendraw with an Act 5 mercenary using Plague as being the best value option for a cold Bowazon. As mentioned a bit earlier, Wizendraw has a large amount of minus enemy cold resistance on a bow, and certainly in more budget oriented builds, it's one of the only item options that provides this mod at all. However, in a late game, there's higher ticket items that offer great alternatives to reduce enemy resistances, such as higher grade cold facet jewels and high end runewords like Infinity, which is more potent than Plague and applies on targets more instantly. So with a number of options that open up in the late game, and with Faith covered earlier having a very good fallback physical damage to counter cold immunes, Wizendraw doesn't quite make the cut in today's top 3, but is still worthy of an honourable mention. The second honourable mention goes to a Bowazon using a Mist matriarchal bow. Mist is also covered previously in the top 3 best value cold Bowazon builds, and in a late game, it sort of makes a comeback. The bow offers plus 6 to bow skills in total, plus 7 if you count Razortail being changed to an Arachnid Smash for that extra plus skill. And in the case of a build using Enigma, the faster cast rate does make a Bowazon's teleport faster as well. However, when compared with a Faith still offers plus 5 to bow skills in total and reaches a faster attack speed breakpoint than Mist, and with Faith also having a large attack rating bonus and ignores target defense, ensuring that freezing arrows hit as often as possible, Faith edges out Mist in overall DPS with Freezing Arrow, which is confirmed in the testing results in both Players 1 and Players 8 cow runs for both builds. That said, Mist is going to be a little safer with a 40% or resist and 24 additional stats for Vitality, and is going to be an attractive option for hardcore players. But a cold Bowazon build is still a safe build that can freeze most threats before they pose much of a problem. Still, Mist is very much a worthy contender and deserves a second honourable mention today. And finally, sitting in first place, we have a cold Bowazon using an Ice matriarchal bow. Ice is a high-end rune word specifically made for a Frost Maiden or cold Bowazon, which uses the runes Am, Shale Jar, and Low into a 4-socket bow. Ice offers a bow that makes a Bowazon's freezing arrow attacks very potent, with high amounts of cold skill damage bonus of up to 30% and minus enemy cold resistance of 20%, which together on their own rival the stats offered on the cold faceted matriarchal bow covered earlier. Ice also provides ignores target defense, which improves the overall chance to hit for freezing arrow attacks, as well as a 25% chance to cast level 22 Frost Nova on striking and a Holy Freeze aura when equipped, together which add a touch more AoE damage. Even a lifesteal on the bow opens up options on the ring slot to get, say, poison length reduction or faster cast rate instead of more life leech. For physical damage, I sit somewhere in the middle between Faith and the cold faceted matriarchal bow, which is just enough damage to allow life and mana leech to work effectively, but not so much damage that it provides a good alternative to cold damage in certain situations. And then there's a large bonus to gold find. Bowazons aren't known to be good gold finding builds, but it's definitely better than nothing. Putting all this together, Ice is the highest DPS option for a cold Bowazon and also offers some extra crowd control with a Holy Freeze aura, and some great icing on the cake benefits on top of that as well. Ice's chance to cast Frost Nova also looks pretty cool and is a nice visual addition on top of the freezing arrow attacks that land on monsters. And so with no doubts, the build that takes first place for the best late game cold Bowazon build goes to an Ice matriarchal bow. So there you have it guys, some really cool late game freezing arrow Bowazon builds that are expensive to put together, but with Enigma and Infinity and some of the coolest bows in the game to use freezing arrow with, the investment in my opinion is worth it. If you enjoyed this video, then do hit that like button to show your appreciation. Let me know in the comments below if you're playing a freezing arrow Bowazon right now and how much you're enjoying playing the build. Also, do check out the Bowl Discord community, come and say hi to myself and others in there and start hanging out in some games together. As always, if you haven't done so already and want to keep up to date with more Bowazon content, then do subscribe and hit that notification bell. Otherwise, stay safe, have a great day, and I will see you in the next video.